the one organisation that Amanda left out, I think, that is owed a debt of gratitude is the Herald itself. Thank you very much to their team for organising this, as well as to the Arts Centre. The last time I saw anybody holding a microphone like that, by the way, was Freddie Mercury. And I'll be asking the candidate to be generous with the microphones that they're going to pass along as we share them. Forgive me, my mother would make me say this. I'm sorry for not wearing a tie. I've just got off the M40 and I remembered the suit but not the tie. I would gladly, however, be wearing a gorilla suit as seen in the Euro Song Contest to be here this evening amongst your good selves. And once again, what a great turnout. And it shows that democracy is alive and well in the opinionated Stratford-upon-Avon that has been my home for a quarter of a century. We are going to go along from left to right. Don't read anything into that. With each candidate giving us a minute. Liz, if I could ask you to point the microphone at Tom, and Tom Darwood, who's an independent, is our first speaker. 1 minute. Please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege to stand in this great constituency. I beg your pardon.
Thanks, Jeff. Let me do that. Maybe move that microphone towards you. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege for me to stand in this constituency. I feel it is a great honour, and I come with a great sense of responsibility. My name is Tom Darwood. I'm a carpenter from Essex. We came to Britain in 1954 from China, where I was born. Why I'm here is because Shakespeare has such a universal appeal. In my life, I hold a template which I feel responsible to convey to the British people, which will have universal appeal. But it is dependent upon Her Majesty the Queen constitutionally concluding the hereditary monarchy. If that happens, I believe it will precipitate Britain on a global scale. That will put Britain in a position to politically and culturally and economically present herself to the world beyond the limitations of Brexit. I want to create a Brit force around the world where Britain can renew her greatness without the acquisition for empire.
And on that note, your minute is up. Thank you very much, Tom Darwood, a carpenter from Essex. Now we move along to Elizabeth Adams, representing the Liberal Democrats.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all. I'm here as a local mum. I live in the constituency. I use the same services that you do, and I'm here to stand up for our local services and for my family's future and your families too. You don't have to accept the vision of Brexit that Theresa May and Nigel Farage are dragging us towards. It's your future, your choice. You deserve a say on the final deal, and you should have the right to reject a deal and to remain a member of the European Union if that is going to be best for our families, best for our schools, and best for our education. This is Great Britain. We deserve an innovative future, a world leader. It's your future and your choice.
Thanks very much, Liz. To my immediate left, I being in the centre, Jeff Kenner representing Labour.
Well, thank you, the Herald, for hosting this debate, and thank you, the audience, for being here to participate, to show that political debate is alive and well in Stratford. In this election, it's a straight choice between Labour and Conservative. In 2015, I won the most votes behind the Conservatives among the parties standing again this time. But it's not just about Labour being the main challenger here. It's about what Labour offers, the real change for a fairer Britain set out in our manifesto. It's such a good manifesto that we actually published it twice. But no one can say, I think, after that manifesto that we're all the same anymore. Because on June the 8th, you have a clear choice between a Labour government that will stand up for the many and the Conservatives who look after a privileged few. Under the Conservatives, our living standards are falling, wages are squeezed, and prices are rising. The NHS and social care are at breaking point, and our schools face unprecedented cuts. Under the self-styled new party of the worker, workers lack the most job security. More than ever, we need a Labour government that will provide healthcare, social care, and education with the resources that they need. I will be a full-time constituency MP here. I've got the experience as a district councillor, and I've worked with all parties to get things done. So don't let the Conservatives hold Britain back. Let's build a Britain that works for the many and not the few. choose Labour on June the 8th.
Thank you, Jeff. And hopefully, Jeff, in a sign not of things to come, you were 25 seconds over budget, but I'm sure I'll be forgiven. Our next candidates to my immediate right are the MP for the last several years. I can't remember, is it 7 or 8 or 7 years? Nadine Zahawi.
Can I echo Jeff's words to thank the Herald, a quality local paper, is the heart of the community, and can I thank you all for being here tonight. Whichever way you voted in the EU referendum, it is incumbent on whoever forms the next government to deliver a good Brexit. Now, I believe that delivering a mandate to Theresa May to be able to negotiate with the EU 27 and be able to sit in a room and say, this is what I can deliver and my parliament will support me, is incredibly important for the future of our country. It is also important to lock in the economic achievements of the past 7 years. We've seen today's employment figures, again, a fall in unemployment for another quarter, record employment in our country. Only Theresa May and her team, I think, can deliver that stability, that strength and stability of the economy. Locally, schools, I've met every single school head and many of their governing bodies. We have a funding formula that is being consulted upon. The consultation is now back with the government. The government has promised to come back to us. I'll be fighting to make sure we get the fair funding for our schools in Stratford-upon-Avon.
Thank you, Nadine Zahawi, who was inflated by 20 seconds, but then you know all about inflation. We'll move straight along now to what I found that amusing, to Dominic Giles, who's our next speaker.
Thank you. I've just come here from a parents' evening. This feels like one huge, big parents' evening, and I've got to talk about your child. And I really hope we have questions about education later. Right now, for many of us, the world is a pretty scary place. Brexit, Trump, Le Pen, Syria, climate change. And what makes it worse is the feeling that events are completely out of our control. Voting sometimes seems pointless, and it's not always easy to tell one grey politician from the next. At times like these, we have to dig deep. We have to think big, bright, and bold. And we have to stand up for what matters. Old politics is letting us down. But the Green Party knows that hope will always triumph over fear. The Green Party is the only party committed to stepping outside of that box with old politics written on it. We know there's a better way to deliver change. So please, stand with us and the over 1 million people who voted Green in 2015. Stand up for a fairer, greener future. Stand up for a new politics which puts people and the planet before privatisation and profit. Stand up for what matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. And finally, to our next candidate, who's also an independent, Jandy Stairway. Jandy, Nadine, thank you very much for passing that microphone.
I feel as I could vote for any of those. You're probably all won over already. But I remember the general election of 1945, when my mother was very left-wing, vicar's wife, so not able to campaign in the constituency, and my father was apolitical, so she went off somewhere else. And the morning following, when the results came in and the Labour Party got in, against all odds, because Churchill had just won us the war, we were all dancing around the kitchen table. And what did we get? The NHS and the welfare state. You'll never starve in this country, and you've always got their welfare state, the NHS look after you. But we've got to start taking responsibility for it, ourselves, and the world. And so I come from Stratford originally. I've never actually lived here except for before I can remember. My great-grandfather was Sir Arthur Hodgson, and he'd been a politician in Australia, KCMG, which Marie Corelli said stood for King of the Colonial Mutton Growers. He made a lot of money. He bought Clopton House, and they lived there doing good works all their lives. He was mayor 5 times. They turned their home in, my grandfather turned the home into a hospital in the First World War. My mother was 17 the day the First World War started. She'd never been to school. She was steeped in nursing. She just went straight into the hospital as soon as the wards were built. I've done talks on in Stratford, actually, on the hospital, because it's very, really interesting. And I became a nurse. What else could you do, really? Otherwise, I'd have been a vicar, because my dad was a vicar, and all my relations were vicars. And I want to empower you. I want you at nearly 80, I'm 80 next year, to be as powerful as I feel now, and I want to hand you something that you can carry on through your lives. And if you come to me in the surgery, I'm not going to solve your problems. You're going to be able to solve your own problems.
Thank you very much, Chandi. I should have interrupted, but it was too fascinating. It's your turn. I'm going to try and get as many people in as possible. The rules are very simple. If I think you're showboating or grandstanding, or any of these people are not answering the question, I'll show the other side of my investigative journalism past. Our first question, which has been sent through the Herald, is from Dr. Manuela Pertigella from Stratford-upon-Avon, and she's with us just here.
Thank you. The NHS squeezed like never before. Schools losing staff because of cuts. Working families using emergency food parcels, and a 50% rise in child poverty predicted by 2020. When Theresa May replies that people go to food banks for complex reasons, does this mean she's indeed living, as Jean-Claude Juncker suggested, in another galaxy?
Okay, Dr. Persigella, thank you very much indeed. Working families using emergency food parcels, and the Prime Minister, as was and may well be soon, in another galaxy. I have to start with you, Nadine Zahawi.
Could you read the question again?
Well, I'll read the brief of it. The NHS squeezed, schools losing staff because of cuts, a 50% rise in child poverty predicted by 2020, and working families using emergency food parcels. When Theresa May replies that people go to food banks for complex reasons, does it mean she's living in another galaxy? Nadine.
Well, let me talk about the NHS. We are getting a new eye and cancer hospital in Stratford, which is, I think, a welcome investment by the South Warwickshire Healthcare Trust, run by Glenn Burney, who's incredibly capable. We're not as lucky in other parts of the constituency. At the Horton Hospital, where I've been campaigning with my neighbouring colleagues, we're seeing services cut back. Part of that, I do believe, is leadership. When we had this malware attack on the NHS the last 48 hours, Glenn Burley was the only leader out of the 3 trusts that actually cover my constituency who texted me immediately to say, we haven't been hit, but we've actually shut down the system just in case, and we'll be back up, and gave me a full plan on that. So part of it, I do think, is leadership. The chief executive of the NHS, who was actually hired by the last Labour government, Simon Stevens, asked for the budget till 2020, which the government delivered for him. We're investing about $6.5 billion roughly every year from now till 2020 in the NHS. We are, you're right, under pressure. There is no doubt. I would be completely wrong to suggest to you that the NHS are not under pressure. The staff do an amazing job under incredible pressures. There is, I think, 1 million more people being treated in A&E over that since 2010. The numbers of people who are over 75 has grown in many ways in a good, healthy way, but that does put more pressure on the NHS. We do need to make sure that our health service and social care are integrated. We're putting more money into social care as well with a better health fund. I think about 3.2 billion is going into that. Our schools and the funding for our schools is incredibly important. We must make sure that core funding in Stratford...
We're not on schools just now, we're on the NHS.
Well, there were 4 parts of the question. So NHS and then schools and then food banks.
I think the setting at the moment is that Dr. Persigella has asked is about a range of things, you're right, including schools cuts and education and so on. But are you satisfied, on behalf of the people who are considering you, that $6.5 billion is enough? $6.5 billion is a lot, but I have no idea what it means. None of us do really, do we? It's about how much is needed to be spent. Are you satisfied that Mrs. May is in touch with those people in schools, in hospitals, and who need food banks are being helped?
Well, Mrs. May has to listen to the leadership of the NHS. If Simon Stevens says, this is the budget I need to be able to deliver the services that are fit for purpose, for Stratford-upon-Avon and every other constituency in the country, then she has to listen to Simon Stevens and deliver that, which I think she has done. Her government has done that, and the previous coalition government also did that. Schools funding, per pupil funding, has been increasing year on year. But yes, core funding is under pressure because we've got the funding formula. We want to make sure we get the right amount of core funding into our schools in Stratford. There are schools around the country that get almost double what we receive here in Stratford per pupil. I'm fighting very hard to make sure that we are heard. As I said in my opening remarks, I've met every school head and many of their governing bodies to make sure that we got the feed into the consultation to explain that actually to cut back on core funding will be deeply damaging for us in Stratford. And I'll continue to fight that if I'm your Member of Parliament. On Theresa May and food banks, of course we don't want to see people going to food banks, but actually inequality grew under the Labour government. And you can check those facts, you can check that fact, you may not like it, but inequality, wage inequality grew at a much greater rate than it has under the Conservative government. The top 1% paid 27% of the income tax in our country, and Theresa May is quite rightly making sure that she protects workers' rights and makes sure that we are on the side of the many people who are out there trying to work hard and put food on the table.
Okay, I'll stop you there. I think you're mean for laughing. It's not fair. The problem is the answers are very often complex to simple questions. But I'm just going to ask you for a yes or a no, which is the final question, which is, do you think, which I'm going to translate into non-pejorative, do you think Mrs May is in touch with the working class of this country?
I do, very much so. I think if you look at her words at the steps of number 10 Downing Street, if you look at her actions, in actually the announcements we've already had, we haven't seen the manifesto yet, but with the announcement we've already heard around protecting workers' rights, making sure that carers can take a year off and be able to go back to work afterwards, building more homes by partnering with local authorities, with housing associations, investing in the skills base of our country. All these things are important to protect and lock in the economic success.
Yes, then.
Absolutely.
Okay. So thank you, Nadine. Now, the person who came second in the last election here in Stratford, I'll turn to next, Jeff Kennett from Labour. Give us your response to that. First of all, a lot of money is being spent on the NHS. It is a bottomless pit. It has to be managed somehow. And Nadine has pledged to work on behalf of schools in his constituency to get the right amount of money. And he's confident that Mrs May is in touch with the needs of the working people of this country.
Okay, well, let's just start off with this point that Nadine made about listening to the leadership of the NHS. Of course, we must do that. But we must also listen to the users of the NHS, who are telling us about the rising waiting lists. We know about the rising waiting lists, the longer waiting times for GP appointments, the longer waiting times for A and E, and the lack of parity of funding between mental health services and other parts of the health service. And locally, Nadeem has failed. He has failed to stop the downgrading of the Alex Hospital in Redditch, and he is failing, it seems, to influence the powers that be over the Horton Hospital. We have had a personal commitment from John Ashworth, the Shadow Secretary of State for Health, that there will be no closure of the Horton Hospital. The Horton Hospital provides vital services to the people south of Stratford, in particular, Shipston, South Warwickshire. It's essential that those are maintained because people in villages, in particular in rural areas, need to have a hospital that is accessible to them. But we have to actually look at fair taxation because that's the only way in which we are going to get the NHS the funding it needs. And I think it's very important that Labour has given a tax guarantee that 95% of households will pay no increase in income tax, that there will be a lowering of the 45p rate to the 80,000 a year level. And that will have the effect of generating £6.4 billion that can be invested into the NHS. And we have to have that investment. And it is about, we did it the same, as you so rightly said earlier, after 1945, when the NHS was founded, we had to invest the resources we had to get it going. And that's the only way in which we can ensure that the NHS has the resources it needs. And it does require good management. I agree with you. We don't just simply spray money around. We have to invest where it's wise. We have costed it. For example, we will deliver the cancer strategy, which will improve the life prospects of 2.5 million people who are living with cancer. We will end the pay cap, which is really causing huge problems for recruitment and retention in our NHS services. I too welcome the Cancer and Eye Hospital. It's a magnificent thing. There's been tremendous acts of generosity through fundraising, through local groups. The work that's been done has been magnificent. But the day-to-day funding of that Cancer and Eye Hospital has to come out of mainstream NHS budgets, which are paid for by the taxpayer, by us all. And this is very, very important.
So you believe that a general, because there is not a general taxation rise, but there is specific taxation rises in pockets of the country, is justifiable and would be popular in order to support, amongst other things, the NHS?
Yes, because when the Conservatives are in, they always put up taxes that are on middle and lower income people. Taxes like VAT, home insurance premium, air passenger duty, even things like that where they get money through fees, passport fees, tribunal fees, all the things that actually everyone has to pay. But the tax breaks are only for those at the very top. And we are looking at ensuring that people who are below, 95% of people are not paying more tax, but we do have also for everyone a freeze in national insurance contributions and a freeze in VAT.
You've had roughly the same time as in
just quickly.
Quickly on food banks, because I have one question.
Just quickly on food banks, maybe we'll come back to schools, because I think I want to get everyone needs to get it going. On the food banks, I think it's a disgrace in this day and age that people are using food banks We are the fifth most wealthiest country in the world. Under the last Labour government, we cut child poverty in half. It's only since 2010 that we've seen poverty rising again in this country. And we have to do something about reversing the welfare cuts, because it's the welfare cuts which hit the majority of people who are hit by the welfare cuts are actually in work. People who are in work on contracts. We heard all about the issue of Theresa May supporting working people, but it's people who are in work on 0 hours contracts, on insecure work arrangements, who don't know from day to day whether they will have work. These are the sort of people who are being worst hit. And so we really have to change this culture in society and make our society work for the many and not the few.
Okay, thank you, Jeff Keller. There's lots of topics covered: NHS, schools and food banks. How do you respond to what you've heard?
Well, I think the basic point is families are struggling day to day, and people just want to be able to get on with their lives, but then a family member falls sick, you can't get a GP appointment, you're stuck in A&E for hours, your children's schools are at risk of having staff redundancies. You go to the local shop, you see your shopping bill going up and up. I think it's 2.7% inflation today already. And what's the key issue here? It is leaving the single market. Because at the end of the day, we cannot reduce inequality if we don't have a strong economy. And there are thousands of British businesses and jobs that are reliant on the single market. And if we drag them out of it, then prices will go up, jobs will be lost, and we really will have an even worse crisis than we have now. And neither Labour nor the Conservatives have accounted for the minimum £59 billion black hole that is going to be left in the budget through leaving the single market.
So you're...
In terms of measures to help families, The Liberal Democrats have released our manifesto today, and I do hope that you will all go online and take a closer look at it. There are a number of measures that we are introducing in terms of extending free childcare, a young person's bus discount card for young people aged 16 to 21, which will reduce their cost of transport by 2/3. We will be allowing universal credit to not be reduced for two parents working, because at the moment, as soon as two parents working, it's reduced. And there are a number of other things in terms of stopping the two-child cap on child benefit, and a number of other measures that we're going to reform benefits to help working families out there. But I think the main issue here is to be honest with people about what is at cost from the decision that's going forwards. I know it's been sort of the thing that we've been focused on now, it feels like, for years. But this is a major constitutional change to our country. It is going to severely impact everybody's lives. And this is why we are fighting tooth and nail when everybody's telling us, stop, it's over, it's done. This is why we are fighting to make sure that you end up having the final choice on this massively important decision, because it will be your shopping bills. It will be your NHS that is suffering when EU citizens that staff it have their positions put in jeopardy, when we don't have the money to fund our NHS and our schools properly, because our economy is tanking, because we are left in the predicament where we may end up having to leave with no deal. It is a massive issue that is affecting everybody's lives, and this needs to be understood.
So your answer to the problems of the NHS and schools and social inequality is to give Britain the chance to go and decide on whether it wants the deal or not? That is going to affect every area that we spend money on. In terms of the NHS, actually, our 5-point plan to deal with the NHS has been commended by the ex-chief executive officer of the NHS, and a letter was in the Guardian. I forget his David, I forget his surname, sorry. But there's a letter in the Guardian in the last week signed by several top healthcare professionals, because we are taking the politics out of the NHS. We are being honest with people, and we've proposed initially to put a penny on income tax to get the funds needed for the NHS. And that's across the board? Everybody pays an extra penny in income tax?
Yeah, every single tax bracket has a penny going on to it.
Liz, thank you very much indeed for that answer. I've got to, you've had just as much as the others. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time. I do apologise. We can come back to all of these issues, because I want to bring you all in as well. Dominic, from the Green Party next. Response, please. What's your solution in this grey world, in a green way, to ensuring that we can resource the NHS, society, to prevent food parcels from being needed, and indeed our schools?
That's an easy one, isn't it? That's a nice, quick question. The answer to the question that was asked was yes. She hasn't got a clue, because she never meets people, does she? Theresa May goes around in a little bubble of advisors and supporters. She speaks in empty factories. Journalists aren't allowed to ask questions. I'm terribly worried, before I get onto the money, about our democracy. She's trying to turn this into a presidential North Korea. I noticed even Nadim's tweets the last few days have got @Theresa May on them, asking us to vote, and I think tonight he asked us to vote for Theresa May. We don't live in Maidenhead. We can't vote for Theresa May. And she needs to get out there, and she needs to debate with Jeremy Corbyn. If she's going to go and debate on our behalf for Brexit, how can we trust her when she can't be trusted to go on television? I've got very little time for David Cameron, but at least you kind of know what he would be like, because you've heard him speak. To get back to the question, you know what? We are the 5th or 6th richest country in the world. We've got the money for the NHS. We've got the money for schools. We haven't got the money in the right place. Talking about equality, in the 5 years of the coalition government, the 1,000 richest people in this country doubled their wealth. Food banks 10 years ago, 3,000 food bank parcels were handed out in 2005. 3,000. It's over 1 million now. We've got the money. Our NHS is not failing us. We are failing our NHS. We can afford to put money into it if we take money away from some businesses, some companies. We stop outsourcing to private companies who make millions out of our NHS. Outsourcing is what you do when you give up governing. Our government should be in charge of our National Health Service, not selling it off to private companies who make huge profits. And on the question of Windows XP, which is surely because the NHS hasn't got any money, where was Jeremy Hunt this weekend? Anyone see him anywhere? And he's our health secretary. Appalling, absolutely disgraceful. So yes, Theresa doesn't know what's going on. They've obviously realised that she can't debate, so they're not going to let her. But remember, she wasn't voted in anyway. She just became the leader because Andrew Lebson fell apart.
Well, she was voted in, to be fair. She became an MP. Well, she became an MP, in that sense she was voted in.
I mean, if you want, I've got
so can you just give me, can you translate that, what you just said?
Tax the rich companies, get rid of food banks, pay for the NHS, and I hope we've got time for schools later, because pretty much everything Nadeem said was not true. Every single school in Stratford is going to lose out because of the fairer funding.
Okay.
AGS, £400,000 less your child is going to have if they go to AGS by 2019. Studley, 380. My school, Stratford Girls Grammar, 400. Stratford School, £736,000 less. Roughly £600 per student, whilst at the same time, I have to teach new GCSEs and new A-levels with no textbooks because you can't afford them. Talking about mental health services, it takes at least 6 months to get a student into CAMS. So if you have a student who needs mental health, it takes 6 months waiting list because, again, the coalition government cut funding on mental health.
Okay, Dominic, can I just pin you down into the last thing I want to ask you, because we move on at that point. Can you just, how are you going to, where's the money coming from to get rid of the need for food banks, and where's the money coming on for the NHS? Specifically, give me a policy or a policy area where you're going to get that revenue to address the social ills that you've described so eloquently.
Tobin tax.
I'm sorry?
The Tobin tax.
Just explain that for me.
Robin Hood tax.
Okay.
Robin Hood tax.
So you're going to tax the rich and give to the poor. Redistribute wealth.
Taxing companies who make financial transactions is not quite the same as taxing the rich, is it?
So a redistribution of wealth.
Yes.
An old-fashioned redistribution of wealth.
It's not old-fashioned. Don't try and turn it into I'm not here. Jeff does a great job at defending Labour. I'm not here to defend Labour. When you talk about Labour's policies, go back to the 70s. The 70s, we were much more equal economically than we have been ever since.
We were also known as the sick man of Europe, just for fairness. But let's move. Why we join you? I'm losing here. Jandy, you're next. So you're correct, Dominic, to remind me. The question is, do you think Mrs May is on the wrong galaxy because she hasn't addressed correctly or adequately the needs of the NHS, schools and society?
Well, I'm interested in history. Can you remember who the last person that didn't kind of go to Parliament and say they were going to dissolve the government? What happened to him? He lost his head, Charles I. You're steeped in Shakespeare, so I'll bring you back to the bard. Lord, what fools these mortals be. What I want to do is to take some new ideas to Parliament. They're all stuck in some sort of time warp. And the NHS is a black hole into which we drop this billions and billions of money. We've all got to start thinking differently. Frank Benson ran the Shakespeare Company when my mum lived here, and he believed in the fair mind and the fair body. And we've got to go back to something very Greek. On the walls of Apollo, didn't it say, know thyself? I would say to you, know thyself. Have you got the ability to respond to what's happening now? Because it is like after the Second World War. We do almost need to think in a sort of way by restricting ourselves with rationing. I see endless cars going along with one person in it. We used to take people with lifts in cars. Honestly, we're all frightened because the press tells us about paedophiles and murders and all these things. There are no more than there ever used to be. Honestly, there aren't. It just sells newspapers. There is a newspaper, called Positive News. Sorry, I'm begging yours.
That wasn't me.
No, but it is a green newspaper. I mean, bad news sells newspapers. I'm sorry, Herald, please, carry this message that you need to get in the driving seat, and that's why you want me at Westminster, because that's where I want to be, and I'm going to be there for you full time. I've got nothing better to do. I've been cast off as a granny. If you don't elect me, I shall just go home and dig my garden, which needs digging anyway.
So you will remain purposeful, notwithstanding. You'll remain purposeful, notwithstanding whatever the.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Chandy. And now over to our other independent, Tom Darwood. Is Mrs. May on the wrong galaxy by being out of touch?
Well, I think Mrs. May is a very competent person. I think she's trustworthy. But she does change her mind now and then. The national health is deep in all our hearts, isn't it? It's something we can all feel very, very proud of. Now, I always view things philosophically and especially theologically. Theologically, in my website, you will see a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ hung on the cross to redeem mankind salvation. On the other hand, I've got a picture of the NHS, and I see that NHS as equal to what Christ did for humanity, but from a different perspective, from a secular perspective. In my writings, I think this is what part of the message that the Queen will give to the universe, that there is a God, but he's acting in a secular way, apart from the religious way. So we can now hold a relationship with God not just on a religious tangent, but on a secular tangent, which calls upon responsibility, duty, and courage. Now, the NHS, Jandy has just spoken about some ideas she wants to bring to Parliament. Now, one of the ideas I would like to suggest to you this evening is the UK is in some danger of splitting, and I don't want that to happen. I believe we are a great force if we stay united as a united kingdom. But I do believe there are particular parts of this united kingdom which are very capable, especially with money. I won't say who they are, but they live in the north of England, or very north of England, or Britain rather. And I'm wondering whether...
So you're talking about the Scots or the Yorkshire people?
Both, actually.
Okay.
They're both very competent and very inscrutable. They're very, very direct people.
Okay.
I admire them immensely.
And what are you saying? You're going to take some money from them? Or...
Oh, no. I'm not. I may only look silly, but I'm not that silly. Now, I suggest that we devolve responsibility. Instead of giving such a huge institution like the National Health to one particular minister, why not give it to the whole of one country? So that, Scotland could take after the National Health, another country could take after the economics, and so on and so forth. In one sense, that helps to keep the United Kingdom united. The other is that I believe a big institution should be supported by big industry. So if it means taking more tax from the wealthy, rather from the global institutions that manifest such wealth for their shareholders, I believe we can place them in an embarrassing position where their taxes are clearly seen to be supporting a particular institution, such as the National Health or education.
Thank you, Tom, and that's you at the same time as the others. Thank you very much to Tom Darwood. Now, look, this is your evening, really, so I want to start asking you to ask questions, and I hope you'll agree with the philosophy that I'm going to use here. If we hear the same question and the same answers, I'm going to move it along, and so I might seem rude, but I just want as many people who've got questions to ask them. So, and all of the candidates have, one way or the other, into history, that they want to come back on some of the points which I think will be raised. There's a gentleman right in the middle here, about 6 rows from me. He's wearing a black T-shirt and he's now standing. And he has a question, and he's not taking the hint. He's not sitting down. Can you introduce by your name, please, Nick? And then, and then the question area.
My name is Nick Wendy, and I'm interested in the question that was just asked, but spreading it a bit wider, really, is the legitimacy of Mrs. May, because she wasn't elected. But I'm also interested in the legitimacy of Mr. Zahawi. Well, if we go back to 2010, and when he stood for election again, saying that I was going to take a half-time job earning £250,000 a year, and in fact grossing £700,000 this year, would he have been selected by the local Tories? So that's question one. And secondly, if he wasn't both an MP and a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, would he have been offered that job? Was he only offered that job because he was an MP and a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee? And thirdly, was the £200,000 libel settlement that he got inflated because he was both an MP and a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee? And so therefore, if he wasn't legitimate to hold those positions in the first place, was he legitimate to receive that libel settlement?
Thank you very much for that question. It's over to you to answer those questions.
Very much. Let me take that question first, and then I want to come back to the schools issue. Nick, let me explain.
Would you have been selected as MP if you went forward and said, I'm going to be, as the questioner put it, a part-time MP?
Well, MPs actually, as backbenchers, are allowed to have outside interests, and therefore I have outside interests. I never allow my outside interests to come in the way of my work as your member of Parliament, ever. If Mrs. May decides to promote me, as my neighbour has been promoted, Jeremy Wright, then he will be running a department as well as being the MP for Kenilworth and Southern. That is how our democracy works, sir. And therefore, I, like others, would love to serve as a minister, and I would give up all my outside interests, all my earnings, just to serve in Theresa May's government. But let me just address the issue of my outside interests. None of my outside interests have anything to do with my work in politics. I'm a chemical engineer. The area of work that I do is an area of expertise. All the outside interests actually were tied to my expertise rather than my work in Parliament. I think it's a good idea that parliamentarians have a hinterland outside of politics. If it wasn't the quantum of money that you clearly object to, if I was a doctor or a nurse, as we have, or any other profession who already are backbenchers in Parliament and actually do that work, I don't think you would object to that. I don't see a problem with us actually trying to attract entrepreneurs to come into politics. You know, they do great things. They create wealth in the country. I'm very proud of being an entrepreneur. And as I said, if Mrs. May decides to promote me, I will give up all my outside interests and serve in a department as well as being your member of Parliament. And you have those two jobs.
Do you think you'd have got the jobs that you've got, or the job in specific detail? That
absolutely.
If you had not been an MP?
Absolutely, because I already, before becoming a member of Parliament, I already had interest in both that sector itself and in that region of the world. So I would never, ever use my position as your member of Parliament to gain out of employment. Listen, I'm an entrepreneur. I've built companies. I am very, very proud of my track record of creating wealth for our country and jobs in this country. YouGov now employs, I think, over 1,500 people, both in the UK and other parts of Europe and elsewhere. And so I think it's actually healthy for Parliament to have members of Parliament who actually have a hinterland, a understanding of the world outside, whether it's actually the world of entrepreneurship or medicine or anything else. That's a good thing. I think it would be a much lesser place if all it had was professional politicians.
And do you think you would have received a large a libel settlement of, I think it was £200,000, if you hadn't been an MP?
Well, I suspect
what was said was scurrilous.
I suspect that the media organisation and the country behind it wouldn't have tried to libel me if it wasn't because I was critical of their policies in the region. So I suspect it is connected to being high profile. I wouldn't have suffered the libel in the first place.
Do you accept that there is some discomfort amongst some people about your outside interests? Does that bother you?
No, I tell you why, because I actually genuinely believe that Parliament is richer and actually a better place by having parliamentarians who actually have outside interests. As I said, we have a number of doctors who practice today, dentists, we have nurses, we have teachers, we have all sorts of profession, and lawyers in Parliament, entrepreneurs as well. There's nothing wrong with that in my view. I just want to return to the question about schools funding.
I'm going to give you a whole tranche of schools. I think we should have a section on schools, if you don't mind. I'm going to come back to you for a response shortly on that answer, but other candidates will want to have their say. Try and keep it as briefly as we can. Jeff, your response first.
Well, my main point I think I want to make is that MPs are public servants. It's a full-time job. Let's imagine if a school teacher, I don't know what the situation will be with Dominic or others, a nurse or anyone working in our public services was able just to go off and freelance, carrying out all of these private activities, however they may have been achieved, from whatever background. It's just fundamentally wrong that the people that are there to represent us day in, day out, to fight for the people, often people who are in the most difficult of personal circumstances, sort of people who we need to see, we need to have more surgeries, we need to be working more hard in Parliament, that the idea that it should be some part-time job that you pick and choose when you turn up in Parliament and when you perform your job. I don't believe that being an MP in this constituency involves just visiting it on the occasional Friday. What it does involve is being full-time. Now, I'm full-time, I live here, I give you a guarantee, and indeed Labour has made a clear commitment.
But you've never been an entrepreneur, have you?
Should not have second job. Yes, but I do have a hinterland. All of us have hinterlands. I have 30 years of professional experience as an academic and as a housing worker. I'm a professor of European law. I've got all the experience that I have in my employment life. I've traveled all over the world, and I will bring that to my...
But don't you think entrepreneurialism is that is a valid point, that we have lawyers, and doctors, and nurses and teachers? Why not have entrepreneurs? And if you have an entrepreneur, I've never known a skint entrepreneur who isn't trying to get more wealthy. All entrepreneurs try to create wealth. That is what they do. Is that not a valid position to have in Parliament?
It's a valid position to have before you come into Parliament, and you keep those skills and you develop them.
But he is keeping those skills.
How do you keep them current, Jeff? How do you stay current as a doctor if you're in Parliament? You have to practice.
Well, I think that you should be a full-time MP. That's your job, and you should carry out to the best of your ability. And I think it's very important in a constituency like this that you are actually living with your community and working for them. So, I'm not going to comment on the. I think this gentleman will come back with his view on the outside interest, but I think it's fundamental that this constituency is not being well served by having a part-time MP with all these outside interests.
Thank you, Jeff. Liz? So specifically, we're talking about an MP and outside interests, and I think the word that you used was legitimacy.
I think the thing you can say all you want about whether it enriches Parliament having people who are keeping other current paid positions, but to be honest, I'm studying at the moment. I'm on a modest income. We can have people of all professions, but what I'd like to see is more people like me from a working class background who have got the experience of having to live on the breadline in Parliament, people who know how difficult it is and are prepared to stand up for people on modest incomes who are struggling, whether to pay for the heating or whether to do other things. And for me, one phrase stood out actually, Nadim, and, whether it's good for you to have other interests, but I will leave these interests if I get a position in government. To me, that just sums it up. And it just sums up the contempt that local people are being shown. I mean, I'm out, I do sort of casework, I go out and speak to people, and that's at the same time as my normal day job and keeping a house and looking after 2 children. And I manage to reply to people, and the amount of people that have said to me, oh, I've written to Nadine, but I haven't had a response, or I've had a response that's clearly scripted, when you have an office of paid staff working for you as well. I just think, you know, and obviously it's the system of safe seats, and I would like to make the point that we do need urgent electoral reform so that people have a better choice. But at the moment, you know, we've got a chance with the system we're in. I have to say the Labour vote has gone down dramatically since 2015. We polled 4 times the amount as Labour in the constituency in the county elections last week. I don't want to get into an argument about that, but actually you do have a real chance to vote for someone, myself, who lives here. I'm a member of this community, I'm raising a family here, and I would be full-time 100% attention on helping local people and not treating them with contempt.
Thanks very much, Liz. Dominic, very briefly, can you respond? It seems that Mr. Zahawi himself is an issue for that particular question. And what's your response?
Yeah, I'm almost feeling sorry for him. Not
almost.
Really. I come back to what I said at the beginning, democracy. I'm worried about democracy. You can't have somebody as your representative who's working 3 days a week for an Iraqi oil company, because what happens when he votes on fracking? Who's he voting for? What happens when he votes on invading Iraq or Syria? Now, I'm not suggesting the Dean would do anything untoward at all, genuinely not suggesting it, but it puts it in your mind. And you just clear that by saying, that's my job, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not looking forward to June the 9th, because I'm going to have to give up my job as teacher. Shut up! What are you laughing for? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the same response to my 6th form when I said it. But I would absolutely give up my job as teacher. Now I'd be in trouble because I have to give a term's notice, but Theresa May called a snap election. It's not very democratic. And when I went to Parliament, I would look to be in the Department for Education at some point. I wouldn't want to be in Foreign Affairs or NHS or local government, because that's not my skill. And do you know how many Secretary of States for Education we've had in my 25-year teaching career who were teachers first? 1.
They've all been pupils, though, haven't they?
And that's the problem with education. Everyone's been to schools. Everyone thinks they know what school should be like because it should be like theirs. What was Cameron's plan on education? I want everyone's school to be good as mine, Eton.
Okay.
Brilliant. Give us £35,000 a year, and all the schools in Stratford, well, they're better than Eton anyway, because Eton's results are rubbish.
Okay, Dominic, thank you very much.
And also, you need to live here as well. I think, I wouldn't want to make it a law, but I think you do need to live here. I'm quite shocked that in the local elections last month, the Conservatives were asking me in Stratford West to vote for their Conservative candidate, who didn't win. Now he's a general election candidate in Sunderland.
Okay.
If the Conservatives can't find a local candidate, they shouldn't stand.
So, okay, I'm going to get a response from the questioner, and then I'm going to throw out some more questions. Nadine, well, I think it's not going to be 6 each time now. It's going to be, as and when the relevant topics comes up, Jandy, I think. So, do you want to respond to what you've heard, or are you happy with what you've heard? Do you want to right to reply? They just reselected you. They did reselect him. Answer your question. It was a membership vote. So, your very first question was, would they have selected him this time, and they just have? Well, there was an association vote. Okay, thanks very much for that. Now, questions, please. We have a lady here, about 1, 2, 3, 4 rows from the front on my left, her right now standing. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm going to try and do that wherever possible, by the way. Go boy, girl, boy, girl. So it's a little Jedi trick. Okay, question, please. Your name, where you're from.
My name is Sandra Archer. I've lived in Stratford all my life.
I've got to say the deterioration of Stratford is very depressing, and most of that is because of the greed. But that's not what I'm here to ask. Everybody on this, up there on that table, has talked about where the money's coming from. When we had an economic decline, the reason for that the banks were in debt, and we paid billions of pounds to save the banks. When are we going to get it back off the banks? Who's going to pay that money back?
I have to start with you again because you're in government, or were in government, and hopefully again, obviously. When are we going to get our money back from the banks?
Well, to be fair, Alistair Darling actually had to make the decision under the previous government to bail the banks. He made the right decision to actually bail the banks. In fact, today, this morning, we have finally sold the final tranche of the taxpayers' shares in Lloyd's Banking Group. We got the full amount back plus 900 million. Now, you may say that 900 million is not enough as a interest rate over 9 years on the 20 billion that we bailed Lloyd's with, but we got 20 plus 900 million on top. The challenge remains with NatWest and that group of actually getting the money back, but the chief executive of that bank has, I think, made the right decisions in restructuring the bank, and I'm confident that in years to come we will see that money returned. But nevertheless, I think your question is important about where do we get the money, because we had lots of questions about food banks and everything else. In my view, there's nothing moral or decent about crashing an economy. Jeremy Corbyn's political idol is Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. That country is one of the wealthiest countries in South America. It sits on a lake of oil. Every Venezuelan should be a multimillionaire. Today, they cannot feed their people or look after their sick. The sick actually die in Venezuela because they kept taxing and spending and taxing and spending in a nonsensical way, in the same way that both the Greens and the Labour Party are putting forward in this election.
Well, okay. Well, let's get some more questions. The reason I'm moving on from that is because the financial crisis of 2008, which is very important because we haven't got all the money back, and I agree with you completely, Sam, is not an issue which is currently massively debated, and I'm going to try and stick to the issues which are being massively debated before broadening it to the rest of the panel, if you don't mind. So another question, please. We've got a chap there in a green T-shirt, peppermint green T-shirt, black jacket. Thank you very much.
It's a quick point in reflecting on the comment made by Liz about this particular seat, and it is a safe seat. It's a safe seat. So it struck me, why don't the three on the left on the table up there form a progressive alliance? If you want to get rid of a sitting MP, that's what you need to do.
I'm going to start. Jandy, as an independent, would you agree with that? Would you step down in order for a progressive?
No, because I think I can support you best as your candidate.
Okay.
I'm not going to quite stab them in the back, but
you would
I then wouldn't be available to be your member.
Okay. Now, Dominic, Jeff, and Liz, I think it's a very valid point. If you believe that there should be a centre-left alternative in Stratford, why are you fighting against each other? Jeff first.
Well, there is a progressive alliance in this country, and it's called the Labour Party. Yes, in the sense that.
Got to bring that up later.
Am I allowed? That's the Liberal Democrat agent, everyone. If you want to
fine, but he's entitled to be here. We'll come back to you.
He doesn't sound like he wants progressive alliance.
In fact, doesn't that answer your question right there? Doesn't that answer the question right there? But I mean, you wouldn't stand down.
No, I am actually serious about this. The Labour Party is a very broad church. We have people clearly relatively mainstream or centre-left. We have people who are further to the left, but we do work together, and we are working together very well in this election as it happens. And the manifesto does actually reflect a lot of mainstream policies. it's interesting what Nadine was saying, because many people would say, actually, this isn't Hugo Chavez, this is Angela Merkel, because these are the policies that we're putting forward, which I believe can appeal to the wide mainstream of people in this country, are all about better regulation of the banks, for example, and actually breaking up the banks between investment and retail and so on. So we are looking at changes of that kind. But yes, it's true, what was said earlier, when I started off, this is a Labour versus Conservative fight here, because last time I was the best candidate. If you look at what's happening in this general election, it's very much focused on the differences between the parties rather than the similarities between Labour and Conservative. And I would put it to you that Labour is offering a progressive alternative tradition, very much in the European tradition of the social market, like the Netherlands, like Germany, investing in our infrastructure, having a national transformation fund, a national investment bank, which will help small businesses, having public services, having public ownership of utilities, certain utilities, energy, and so on. This is exactly the same as the rest of Europe. So I would put it to you that this is mainstream politics, but we are offering a real choice and alternative in the Labour Party. And, we owe it to the people out there who want to vote Labour. It would be an absolute, in a sense, it would be a betrayal of the people who are supporting Labour in this election if there was any question of people not being offered the opportunity to vote Labour and to support that progressive alternative vision.
Dominic, would you stand down? Would you stand down in order to give the Labour Party? How many councillors have you got currently on district council in Stratford?
District council, that's one.
Yeah, and how many have the Liberals got?
I don't know, but that's local election.
Yes, but it does tell us something about what people locally vote for, doesn't it?
I think it's 4. 1 and 4.
I think it's 4 too. So if you were to go on that basis, then you would step down, wouldn't you? Because you're
1 and 4.
Yeah, they've got 4 times more than
how
you.
many services are there?
But anyway, let's go to Dominic. You're right, Dominic. Again.
Thank you.
Gosh, I'm not my teacher. So the question is, would you stand down, Dominic?
Like a bad teacher, I'm going to ignore your initial question. Banks, the Conservative Party is funded by them. Hedge fund banks. George Osborne's best man made £38 million out of one of George Osborne's deals. So that's why no one's in prison for what the banks did, because they're paying for the Conservative Party. So, electoral... Isn't it a shame that we have to talk about...
Do you really think that? Do you really think...
I never say anything
that
about
do you really think that the legal system, because it would be the legal system that brought a prosecution, the legal system has not prosecuted because the banks are supporting the Conservative Party?
Well, the Conservative Party just got fined £70,000 for not returning their last electoral data correctly, so they're hardly brilliant on the economy, are they? I mean, you don't think George Osborne... The fact that George Osborne's
but the justice
best
system
man made millions out of a deal that George Osborne put through.
Nadeem,
the fact that when we privatise the National Health Service, companies like the one that Nadeem is a manager for make millions out of it. Is that just a coincidence?
Okay, Nadeem?
Well, let me respond to the legal issue first, but actually the company I'm a non-exec for, it was founded by a paid-up member of the Labour Party. It was doing the same business before the Conservatives came into office or the coalition as it was under Labour. So you really have to be careful, Dom. You're a teacher. You have to actually, make sure when you actually say things, you actually research them properly and deliver the facts to your public. On the banks,
you haven't denied it.
One of the I've just said to you they made the same thing before, which had nothing to do. No, I was saying that it was a Labour government, and therefore they were doing the same recruitment business as they were under Labour. That meant there is no difference in terms of policy, whether it's a Conservative coalition or a Conservative or Labour government. That's my point. On the bankers, I co-authored a book called Masters of Nothing on the crash and the financial crisis. And in that book, we made a recommendation to say that any individual who is the head of a bank that is systemically important to our economy, i.e. if their decisions end up crashing the economy, they should go to jail. In the same way, if a restaurateur poisons you, there is a legal process that you can put them in jail. Or if a driver actually recklessly, through reckless driving, kills an individual. Initially, the Treasury rejected it and said this can't be done. Actually, thanks to George Osborne listening to our plea, we now have a law which wasn't in place, which is why Sir Fred Goodwin, who was knighted by Labour, didn't go to prison, right? We now have a law. If another Sir Fred Goodwin, they would absolutely go to prison. That is the difference.
And would you introduce, just on big money, a law which would mean Sir Philip Green might go to prison, for example?
If he's broken the law, if any businessman has broken the law, actually, Theresa May has just announced that no one will be able to take over a company without its pensions liabilities actually being correctly funded. That is what we will do if we are re-elected. That is important. That is a response, a direct response to what happened with BHS.
I missed Liz out. Would you stand aside to allow Progressive Alliance to have a fighting chance against the Conservative candidate in Stratford?
Well, I think the cynical speed with which this election has happened, I think has made that incredibly difficult to do at any sort of official level. But what I would say is the Progressive Alliance is you. You have a vote. You have all the information available to you. So it's up to you to decide how best you want to use that vote. And what I would say is we are in a vastly different position to where we were in 2015. Jeff campaigned and every single event, Labour are going to do this and that, and they came a couple of hundred votes above us and let UKIP come in second. So that's what happened in that election when the Lib Dem vote collapsed. Since then, the Lib Dems have had a surge of membership. We've had loads of new members, activists signing up here. There's a real appetite to build a grassroots movement for change. People are fed up of the same old, and they realise the importance of this election. And actually, we're on the cusp of a shift in politics. The divide isn't between the old economic divides of left wing and right wing. It's between open liberal politics and regressive, authoritarian, closed politics of UKIP and Theresa May. And I'm standing here because I went through a very difficult time personally. I was a victim of domestic abuse. I had to battle against the system, the courts, everything. And I saw how hard it was for regular working people to get justice and to just do things that they needed to do to live their lives. And that's why I'm standing as a candidate, because I want to genuinely help people. I genuinely want to make a difference and bring the experiences that I had. I've had a lot of friends, family members, constituents that have come to me to ask for help, and I've helped a lot of people, and that's what I'd like to do for the constituency.
Thanks, Liz.
Chair, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
Because I just very quickly off the top of my head, Mr. Zahawi,
yes.
Did you come into politics through Jeffrey Archer? What happened to him?
So I'm going to leave that as a rhetorical question.
I actually didn't. I joined the Conservative Party in Kingston and in Putney. I was elected as a councillor for 3 terms on Wandsworth Council.
Okay. I'm sorry, Dominic wanted to hand his homework in late. What was your answer to the question?
Yeah, to the actual question. It's difficult. We shouldn't have to have coalitions because we should have some sort of electoral system that's proportional, that lets us vote for what we believe in. But please...
Sorry, Jeff, excuse me, Dominic, you just applauded that.
Yeah.
Are you saying you believe in PR too?
Yes, I do, absolutely.
Thanks. Back to you, Dominic.
I think ultimately you've got to be a Democrat.
Yes or no, Dominic?
And please don't think that we don't talk to each other at parties. We do talk to each other, and we do discuss things. In Stratford, we are where we are. I feel a duty to stand for the 2,000 people who voted for me 2 years ago. I didn't expect to be here so soon, but I feel a duty to stand for them. And the reason I'm standing is across the country, the Greens got over 1 million votes in 2015, and that gives us a foot in the door. That makes the BBC listen to us a little bit. There is, of course, a coalition of chaos happening. It's UKIP and the Conservatives.
Okay, I need to move on, Jeff. I'm going to because I'm anxious to go through the various issues, I'm going to ask for a reader's question out of it, which was sent in by Peter Pettifer. Peter's over here, specs on the top of his head, distinguished greying hair. There we are. Spoke with personal feeling there from me. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, I'm a father of two boys. One is in school at the moment, one's about to start going to school in a year or so's time. My concern is that the class sizes, as we see in the Herald, are increasing to over 30 pupils per teacher, and the resources for schools being cut. And I'm particularly concerned because I think one of my boys might have some extra needs. So I'm particularly concerned with kids that have special needs or difficulties in school. How are they going to be catered for if there's over 30 pupils in each class and the resources are being taken away from schools, so they have to get rid of staff and so on?
Thank you, Peter. Your question is a broad one about the difficulties that schools are facing, but a specific one about special needs children. Would that be a fair assessment? Okay. What would you do, Liz? I think I'll start with you with this ever-increasing and never leaves us problem of we haven't got the money to do what we want to do, and schools are suffering as a result. That would be the proposal, I think.
Well, I think we have got the money to do what we need to do. As I've highlighted before, there will be a severe economic impact to leaving the single market, which I don't believe has been calculated for in the manifestos of the other two main parties. It has in the Liberal Democrat manifesto. It's fully costed. It's been released today. There are a number of ways that we would raise the funds to fund public services like the NHS and the education system. I've mentioned before about the penny on income tax for the NHS. There are also some, such as scrapping the married couples tax, where we would source other funding from. But we have guaranteed to reverse all the cuts to frontline school and college budgets, and we're protecting per pupil funding in real terms. For Warwickshire, that's £37 million guaranteed for the Warwickshire area, which would reverse all of the cuts that they're currently looking at, and that's also including 2.9 million for the pupil premium funding, which will go directly to the most disadvantaged students. On SEN, we are pushing for earlier diagnosis and for earlier investment in early years, because that's where the evidence shows that it counts more. We're also protecting the pupil premium, and we want to introduce a fairer national funding formula for all schools, which addresses the concerns that there were in the old funding formula, but then don't end up completely disadvantaging 99% of the other schools in the country. I'm not sure how that was allowed to happen, but you know, the Conservatives say that they're good with figures and good with numbers, but yet we get these kinds of policies coming about. So teachers as well are our biggest asset in education, so we'll end the 1% cap on teachers' pay rises and guarantee that all teachers in state-funded schools will be fully qualified. Specifically on mental health and disabilities and special needs, there will be extra funding that's going into this through our budgets with the NHS, and we're also investing to make sure that all public sector workers receive updated training and guidance on dealing with people with mental health and disabilities, because it has to be a holistic community approach, and everybody deserves to have updated guidance on how to deal with people who are suffering from those disabilities.
Special needs often, it's not to do with the NHS though, is it really, but often in special needs pupils in class, education authorities provide support staff, don't they, which cost exponentially more than a single teacher for a large class. That 1% increase in general taxation that we talked about that we'd all have, would that pay for the extra that's needed in the NHS and the extra that's needed in schools, do you think?
The penny on income tax is an initial fund which will raise the £6 billion funding black hole that the NHS currently has. Mm-hmm. We have announced that we will direct it specifically towards primary care, mental health, and basically first access points to take the pressure then off the specialist care of the NHS, because that's where the research shows that the funding will have the most difference. So most of it will be in healthcare, but in terms of updating guidance for professionals who work in other sectors, there are a number of issues around abuse, around child safeguarding, around SEN, where we need to have a more connected approach, where various professionals across sectors and within the community receive updated training and guidance to deal with prevention techniques.
I get that, but I just wonder where do you expect the Liberal Democrats to be able to source funding, because it's a funding issue at school level? Where is the Liberal Democrat policy about funding what is needed in schools as opposed to the NHS?
Well,
I mean, it may not have one. It may have a broader aim of a general taxation, but is there one?
In terms of it's a general manifesto. So there's income that's sourced, and then there's spending promises that we will make. It's not all of them are specifically sourced
Costed
from a
in
different
that.
one. That it's general costing. A number of the measures that we are introducing in order to pay for our policies are the cutting of corporation tax from 20% to 17%, the marriage allowance, raising of the inheritance tax threshold, and the big elephant in the room, not leaving the single market and costing our economy, businesses and jobs, billions of pounds over the course of the next few years.
Okay, thank you very much. That was 4 minutes. So, Jeff, schools, cash shortfalls, specific needs for special
just on
needs
that one, I mean,
children.
all those measures that Liz just mentioned would actually reduce tax revenue. They were all tax reductions. So, but looking at the funding, Labour has fully costed reversing all of the school cuts, and we're doing that by restoring corporation tax to the level it was in 2010, which is basically the level it was under the last Labour government, which was still lower than almost all other developed economies. It's lower than the level in Germany and the United States. And in order to protect small businesses, we would restore what has gone, which is the small profits rate, so that companies with profits under 300,000 wouldn't pay more corporation tax. So those resources from the large corporations would actually ensure that we reverse the school cuts. But we're going further than that. We are actually going to ensure that this formula that Nadine was talking about, that this new school formula, that it leaves no school worse off. Because clearly we've seen all the figures. Anyone who wants to go out there, look at schoolcuts.org.uk. I think of the main party candidates, Nadine is the only one that hasn't signed the pledge. But many of us, and maybe some people who were here, we had a whole series of hustings last time at the schools. We're not having them this time because of, I think, of the exam period. But Nadine went around and he said, this is going to be a wonderful new formula. It's going to restore all the funding. It's going to be favourable to schools in our area. Now, that I appreciate that's probably what you wanted, Nadine, but that's not how it's turned out. It's turned out that the schools in the Stratford area are being particularly hit. And so it's vital that we do have a change of government, and that Labour, we are here, and we heard what we heard just now about the different parties' positions, but Labour is here as the alternative government. And we must be put in a position by voting for Labour to restore those cutbacks. So, my point is, just on the point about the special educational needs, on the special educational needs, it is in our manifesto, and we've made clear that we will deliver out of the funding a comprehensive strategy for children with special educational needs and disabilities, which is based on inclusivity as much as possible. That doesn't work in every case, but also to embed special educational needs and disabilities into training for teachers and non-teaching staff, so that staff, children and their parents are properly supported. So we're very committed on special educational needs, but we have to restore the funding to education and look at it holistically to have to have a national education service. This is our big ambition. Beyond schools, colleges, universities, from cradle to grave, just like the NHS, we should have a national education service.
And you'd scrap the formula and you'd pay for this extra expenditure via taxing business.
Larger businesses, not small businesses.
Not small businesses.
Can I just come in, because Jeff made a point and said that Jeff said the tax reversals that I'd outlined would actually lose revenue, but it's conservative tax cuts that we feel are unfair and unjustified that we would reverse. So obviously that would bring in revenue.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Can I say something?
Yes, you can, Jandy. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm a granny to 9. 6 of them are boys. And I think the system is failing them. We've all got something, dyslexia, dyspraxia, something. Actually makes you rather intelligent, but you can't get it down on paper. And they're bored to tears. They're not being given what they need. What we need is young people with imaginations. Now, two of my grandchildren, the girls, are going to Rudolf Steiner School in Bristol, that is a new, the government's started, and they're absolutely thriving on that because it fosters their artistic abilities and their imaginations.
And that's a government school, that's a state school.
That's a state school. Yeah, that's a state school. And we've got to start thinking differently. And what I can do for you in Westminster is to produce some new imaginative ideas of holism. I absolutely agree, having process from birth to death, really, quite honestly. You've got to sort of think the whole way through. I mean, I could go on and on about education, tertiary education. They come out of it with £90,000 of debt and a bad hangover. I mean, you know, half of them don't do the jobs they've studied for. I mean, I've got children and I've watched them. It's been absolute misery watching. I mean, you feel so powerless as a parent. You have to kind of stay at home fiddling your thumbs and just hoping for the best, because what does one do once they've left home? So really, I think in Westminster, I can produce some new ideas.
Thank you.
And you can come and give them to me too.
Tom's anxious to say something at this point.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I go back to the previous question regarding stepping down and forming a coalition? I am here as an independent because I believe in the independent voice. As much as each one of you can have an independent voice, I think that is so valuable because it can commend itself to original thought, which the lady at the far end wants in Parliament. Now, regarding the sleight of hand which some people project regarding entrepreneurship is a grand thing to have as an MP because it gives us experience. Well, there are other kinds of experience in life, not confined to making money and business. We admit that what that can contribute to the national life, but there are other people, bus drivers, teachers, police officers, etc., that contribute to the national life. So let's not put entrepreneurship on a pedestal as if it was a god to be bowed down to. Put it in its place and we can get a proper assessment of what entrepreneurship means, because it could apply to a suggestion that I'm going to make now as an entrepreneurial of ideas. Now, going back to the last question, which this great lady has put forward in minute detail, I cannot afford that because I'm not part of a political party. But I hope I can come up with some sensible ideas regarding what it is that we can create, which will fund all these different institutions, of which the national health and education is so vital. There was a debate not long ago regarding where to place the third London airport. And I have an idea which may take root, and it's simply this. It's connected with my big ideas. I live in Southend-on-Sea, where there's a narrow stretch of land, and it's vacant, meaning it is barren. Almost 99% of it is barren. My idea is to give that land to the United Nations on a 100-year lease for the purpose of building the airport. And then there's an inner purpose where we offer traditional British values to those workers who are predominantly from Europe or from the Far East. They can then go back to their countries and take with them the expertise that we as British people are so good at in all walks of life. That 100 years later can return to Britain. But in the meantime, I believe in 10 years that airport could be built.
Have you thought of standing in Southend-on-Sea, just out of interest?
No.
Well, maybe you should.
Well,
Tom,
I'll answer that question. I'll answer that question. No. You've asked a question.
Real quick.
I'll answer that question. In my literature, in my website, I put myself forward to be considered as a spiritual bard. Now, I've written Christian literature, like hymns. I've changed the Bible in terms of language and Book of Common Prayer, I would like you to estimate whether or not I stand sufficient in the beauty of composition of what I've written to be considered as a spiritual bard. That's why
it's not a major election issue, though, is it, Tom? So I'm
sorry.
I'm going
no,
to
but I'm
along,
contributing
Tom.
as a candidate from my perspective.
You've certainly offered some fantastic independent
Right.
thoughts.
Well, thank you for allowing me to voice those.
Not at all.
Those ideas.
Let's move back to the question about schools. I'm going to go to Liam. I'm going to end on Dominic because he's a teacher. Everybody's had about 4 minutes, Nadine. The formula's not working. There isn't enough money. Amongst those suffering, because large classes mean all pupils suffer, special needs children.
On the formula, the government had a consultation. All the feedback's been taken. They are yet to announce the final formula. So I thought it was slightly unfair, Dom, and I can't speak at your school, that you announced a set of figures that schools are losing in Stratford without us knowing what the response from government is yet. And I think that's, I hope you'll maybe think about that or retract it, because you announced it as fact, and it clearly is not. Stratford schools, I think, have done an incredible job to make sure that they continue to deliver the best education possible for our children. At least 2 of my schools are going to bid for the new free school on the Long Marston site, and I am clearly anxious that we get another great school there as well. I am proud that 1.8 million children today go to good or outstanding schools. Then 1.8 million more children today go to good or outstanding schools than they did before we came into office in coalition, and then on our own as a government. I, sir, was a governor of a special needs school back in the 90s, Brandle House Special Needs School. I didn't agree, and this really is not a party political point, of integrating special needs as Labour did after 97 into mainstream, because I thought some special needs needed really to be separate rather than to be integrated. But, and they closed down Brandle House School, sadly. But nevertheless, we are where we are today. The most important thing for parents of special needs school in Stratford is we get those kids to have a statement so we know what their special needs are, and then they get the provision they need. It takes far too long at the moment, if I'm honest with you, in my constituency to get that statement. And I'm working with the schools to make sure that we get that process to be much. I've visited the organisation that actually delivers that, and they gave me all sorts of reasons of people been off leave, on sick leave, and so on. But actually, we do need to make sure that that actually works properly, so special needs children do get the investment. But finally, I would say we have protected school budgets. Whether you agree or disagree with us, we have protected school budgets over the last 7 years. Let's wait for the consultation response from the government, and let's take it forward. You can sign as many places as you like, Jeff. My job is to represent the schools in my constituency and to go and tell the minister, whoever he or she happens to be, that we cannot afford a core funding of £4,100 when there are schools in other parts of the country getting £7,000 or £8,000 per pupil. That just doesn't work for us in Stratford, and I hope, if I'm returned as your Member of Parliament, that we'll get a good outcome.
Do you have qualified teachers at this school? We'll talk to these schools when it becomes a big issue, but it isn't at the moment. Do you, as a Conservative MP, do you go and throw a strop then with the Education Minister and the Civil Service and say, you are letting my constituents down, even though that makes you an awkward cuss? Are you prepared to do that?
Well, what I've done already is I made sure I've met with every head teacher, most of the governing bodies. I've taken their very good research, their very good school by school costing to the Minister. The Minister has met with a number of them personally, Nick Gibb, who was, he's passionate about this stuff. And I hope that we get the right formula. If we don't get the right formula, of course I'll rebel.
You heard that here first. And I'll end on a teacher, and then we'll move on to the next topic. And I'll be starting with a lady at the back who has her hand in the air now, when Dominic's had his say, he being a teacher with one of our local schools. Dominic.
Yeah, I might be a while.
You've got 4 minutes.
25 years teaching, frustration built up, and I've got 4 minutes. Okay, Nadeem, I apologise, and I shall retract my statement, and I shall say to everybody, that Studley will lose 380,000, Kes will lose 260,000, Stratford School will lose 236,000 by 2019 if you vote Conservative. It is very clear that of the political parties up here, you've got 3 political parties who will find the money to fund education, and you've got one that won't. And although this audience doesn't seem to be particularly Conservative friendly, what I say to people who are going to vote Conservative, think about your children and think about your grandchildren. And if that means you still vote Conservative, then but you're not happy about education, you're going to vote Conservative because of Brexit, but you're not happy about education, please write to your MP and say, I voted for you, but I'm not happy about this. I can't believe there are 30,000 people in Stratford who are voting for education cuts. So please tell your MP, once he or she is MP, what you agreed and what you didn't agree with. To Jandy, who said her children got bored at school, 2 words, Michael Gove.
Okay.
Your children are bored at school because teachers have to teach to the test. Students have to constantly be tested to pass things, to prove that they're clever enough to get on to the next stage. You don't, what's the phrase? You don't fatten a pig by continually weighing it. We need to let our children grow, experiment, make mistakes. We let teachers be creative, collaborative. That's what we need in the future, not constant test that Michael Gove decided was a great idea before he disappeared. And the final thing is, if you go to hospital, if you go to A&E, and you've broken your leg and you get fixed, you thank the doctors who fixed it. You don't thank the government. So I'd really appreciate if the government didn't take credit for more children being taught in better schools. It's teachers who are doing that. It is not, it really, really irks teachers to hear the government say 1 million children are now being taught in better schools as if that's because of them. It's in spite of them. I've been teaching for 25, I've been teaching for 25 years. I absolutely love my job. I work in a brilliant school. I've never worked in a better school with brighter, more intelligent children. And I really wouldn't want to leave it unless I get another job. But I am deflated. I am fed up. I've thought about packing it in. Teachers are packing it in and they're not filling the places. And we are going to hit a crisis in the next 5 years with our education system if it carries on like this. We really, really are.
Do you support grammar schools? You work on it?
I work in a grammar school, yes.
Do you support grammar schools?
My party doesn't, no, and that's a problem I've got, but I'm not whipped, so I don't have to do what Theresa May tells me to do.
So you do support grammar school?
In my...
So you support them?
Can I answer it?
Yeah, of course.
The Green Party has a long-term plan for the future, not just for the next election. It's not a 5-year thing. In my vision and the Green Party's vision, you would have a local comprehensive school you all went to. You wouldn't have free schools, grammar schools, academies, private schools, state schools, religious schools. You would have your local school that everyone went to. That's not going to happen once I'm elected on June the 9th. So I will not be asking for the grammar schools to be closed on June the 9th. Long-term, I believe in localism. So I would look to Stratford and say, we've got grammar schools. Do you want to keep them or not? Just like in Surrey, if you think it's Conservative in Stratford, go to Surrey. Every single secondary head in Surrey has written to the government saying they don't want grammar schools. So it's a huge nightmare, our education system, which has been built up over 100 years. It's a mess. It's all over the place. And I certainly don't want to change things immediately.
Okay, thank you very much. Just yes or no, Peter, are you happy you got an answer? Peter, thank you very much. Okay, lady at the back currently with the microphone.
Question really is about democracy, because, you know, the thing that I really bother about is the quality of the democracy in our country. And, you know, the little ripples go through the auditorium when people have referred to either the lack of democracy that people are seeing, where they have voted and the vote doesn't count. We're obviously in a safe seat, and I respect the things that you say as our MP, but you are in a very safe seat. We then have all the other candidates saying, no, a progressive alliance isn't the way to behave if you want to change that position. For somebody who isn't affiliated to any party, I see a vote that happened that was critical.
a large proportion of people, 48%, didn't agree with it, a group who, 52%, did win it, then somehow the wishes of a great majority of people seem not to be reflected in the words of our representatives. It seems to descend always into the bickering, and I do understand that. You all have to kind of reflect your political points. But, you know, democracy is quite a fragile thing, and I think a lot of people are really quite worried about the fact that the democracy they live in does not seem to be reflecting certain things that they hold quite dear. People who are elected vote against the things that they've believed in because they're whipped into a position. Very large proportions who disagree with another proportion are finding it quite difficult to talk to each other because of the amount of emotion that has been raised by the different referendum viewpoints. So I suppose the question that I would pose to you all is, what do you think would improve the quality of our democracy currently? Because it does look very fragile.
Thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much. There has consistently been, through my lifetime, Dominic, one party which has pressed for constitutional change. So I'll ask Liz to start that off, because that is the Liberals, and the Liberals before the Liberal Democrats. How do you respond to that? I'm sure you're hugely in support of the PR approach.
Well, firstly, I just want to echo everything the lady has just said, because she's absolutely spot on. And there are a lot of people feeling incredibly frustrated at the moment. And, you know, people keep saying that we need to unite together. Well, just completely dismissing the views of 48% of the population, labelling them saboteurs, the vitriolic language that's being used at the moment is incredibly divisive. And I think the government, whatever its makeup is, has a duty to engage with those people and try to move a way forward that doesn't just sideline almost half of the voting population, and probably the not voting population as well. You are right, Will, that the Lib Dems have been a pioneer of the idea of electoral reform. We want to introduce votes for 16-year-olds across all elections. We also want to improve political education in the education system, because we think that's vital and to go hand in hand with lowering the voting age. We also want to transform the issue of expenses and big donations in politics, because we've seen that there are serious questions to be raised about whether the current system is fit for purpose and actually what the influence is. And I personally would like to see a complete independent review into online and social media campaigning, because it is insidious in its approach, and the government and our political system is at risk of being hijacked by unseen forces genuinely if we don't get a grip on it. The other thing that we want to do is cancel the boundary review, because we think that it's unfair. It doesn't take into consideration communities. Some communities are naturally made up of less people than more people. That doesn't mean it's necessarily unfair because an MP represents slightly less people than another MP. We think that it's more fair if the area that an MP represents is linked towards the local community. We also want to look still at reforming the House of Lords and strengthening trade union members' rights so that they're not forced to support one party over others. If they're paying levies, they should be able to have the choice to support the party that they want to support.
When in government, if you ever reach government, would you do as the whip said?
Me personally? Well, funny anecdote. Actually, I was asked by the Stratford for Europe group to respond to some questions that they had, and I received the copy of this manifesto this afternoon, and I had about a couple of hours to look at it, and I gave my own personal views, and then when I looked at what was written in the manifesto, it was actually almost identical to my own personal views that I'd given, and that is why I am standing as a Lib Dem candidate.
But what if it was the opposite?
Liberal.
I'm just interested because the lady
opposite,
was saying you're all whipped. And
yeah,
I think
if it was the opposite, me personally, that would mean I wouldn't be a Lib Dem. I'm a Lib Dem candidate because the policies and the values of the Liberal Democrats are what I believe and what I think our communities need in order to thrive. And if I didn't believe that, me personally, I'm not the kind of person that would be able to front it
But I'm
just
just
say
intrigued.
something
It's a yes or no,
that I didn't
really.
believe in.
It's a yes or no, because when the Liberal Democrat Party was in the coalition government, it towed the line, didn't it? There was a coalition line, and it towed it all through the 5 years.
That's really not my experience. I protested
No, it did. It just did in the Parliament. It
several
did.
things.
That's why we had
Our
tuition
leader
fees.
currently rebelled on tuition fees and voted against it. He also voted against the bedroom tax, and that's the current leader of the party. There's an old anecdote that if you have 20 Lib Dems in one room, you have 40 opinions because they don't toe the line. It's the whole point of being a Liberal.
Okay. Thanks,
So if I personally believed in something, I would vote with my personal belief, and I would be perfectly prepared to rebel against the party with.
Interesting. Jeff.
I too completely agree with the sentiments of the questioner. We need a fundamentally more democratic country. I actually believe that the Labour Party has the most radical reforming past. We were the first party to support women's suffrage against the opposition of a Liberal government.
It's an awfully long time ago, that.
I know, but I'm just saying, you said about the historical thing. Anyway, but moving forward, in our manifesto, we're committed to a constitutional convention which will fundamentally look at democracy in this country. It's absurd that we have the largest unelected chamber in the world in the House of Lords. Now, actually, at the moment, they're not doing that bad a job because of the historical appointments of the last Labour government. But looking forward, it's fundamentally wrong that the hereditary principle is still there, that we have unelected people there, and it's so large. So we need to look at that and have a democratically accountable
when it had the chance,
chamber.
Did Labour support the Liberal Democrats' policy of pursuing PR?
Well, that's, as I said, my personal position on PR is quite clear. But the Labour Party, clearly, if you look at it purely electorally, the Labour Party would probably lose out in the short term from PR. And we've always had, many, many different opinions. And people like the great late Robin Cook, for example, was a passionate advocate of PR. And I believe in PR. You mentioned we don't have very many councillors in Stratford, but our actual vote in Stratford ought to award us several councillors. Okay, so that I support PR because it's fundamentally democratic. Also in the Labour manifesto is we have votes at 16. It's abhorrent that people are eligible to pay tax, get married, or even join the army, but not able to vote in this country at the age of 16. So we will do something about that. We'll repeal the Lobbying Act, which allows for too much influence, which has gagged charities, and we'll introduce a tougher statutory register of lobbyists. And we'll extend the Freedom of Information Act to private companies that run public services. And I think that's very important given the number of private companies that are involved in public services. So a constitutional convention, we need to make this country much more decentralised, much more democratic locally.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll come back to you, Tom. Nadeem, as an example of democracy perhaps not working, 38% of adults, I think, voted for Britain to leave the European Union, rather than 52%. 38% won the day. How does that work democratically?
Well, if you abstain, you are exercising a democratic process. There is no perfect system. Look, ultimately, when you scan the world, I sat on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the world looks at our democracy, and many countries would wish to have something similar. Yes, of course, it's right to always look at reform.
People often say that, Nadeem. I travel, as you know. I'm just back from Scandinavia. Yeah. I've never heard anybody come up and say, "Gosh, I wish we were like the British Parliament."
Well, maybe not, but maybe to a politician when you begin to talk to them about how our system works. But I do agree. We do need reform, and it's right to always update and improve the system. None of the panelists have mentioned that as part of the coalition agreement, we delivered a referendum on electoral reform, the AV referendum, alternative vote referendum, and the British people voted it down. They didn't want a change. They quite, I think, sensibly like the link between the parliamentarian and the constituency. I'm uncomfortable with just lists, because then you sort of have to be good at making sure you sort of manage up to your party leader to get your name on the list and go up on that list for you to get a seat. I think the link to the constituency is important. The questioner at the back had a very good point about the sort of 48% versus the 52% on the referendum that we've just had on Brexit. And actually, I want to just quote you two quotes. One was the Socialist Prime Minister of Italy, Matteo Renzi, on the Today programme, when asked, should we have a good Brexit negotiation with the United Kingdom? He said, absolutely we should. And the reason he gave is, he said, because democracy matters. Because if we don't deliver a good Brexit, it will mean that we're driving a coach and horses through the democratic process, and the peoples of Europe will rebel, and the rebellion will be much more adverse to the well-being of Europe if we don't deliver the wishes of the British people with a good Brexit. The other quote is from Lord Hill, who was our last commissioner in Europe, very much an arch Remainer, came before our committee when we asked the question, what does no deal look like at the end of the process? I asked him a very specific question. I said, look, what should we do now to get a good deal out of the EU? And his response was, what we should do is get behind our Prime Minister. This is in the national interest. All parties should get behind the Prime Minister so that she has the mandate to secure a deal. You can check it in Hansard. He delivered a speech in the House of Lords on it. He was our last commissioner and an expert on the EU.
Do you imagine we've kind of doglegged into the EU, and but that is a central issue about democracy
and this election.
Yes, and this election. The point is, what are we to believe from if Mrs. May is re-elected, from Mrs. May? I received one of those retweets where she was saying how important it was for us to stay in, and how it was important for business and how it was important for society. 48% of this people of this country simply think we're balmy for leaving the European Union. What's she going to go for? Because you seem to be enthralled to the UKIP wing of the Conservative Party. A hard Brexit or a soft Brexit, and who ever voted on us leaving the single market? I think it's only fair. It's only fair to declare an interest here. I was a Remainer. Still am.
I'm loath to correct you, but actually, you said that 48% think we're balmy to leave. If you look at the current polling.
Never mind that. There was an election. We know what they said. There was an election.
No, but the current polling suggests that out of the 48%, something like 25% actually have moved across and want just a good Brexit.
Well, the polls said we're going to stay in. So how much?
They respect democracy.
But okay. But let him answer the question. Let him answer the question.
All the pulses. I'm not trying to look. Ultimately, we had a campaign. We had a debate. Even Nick Clegg, Andrew Neil on the politics show, I think yesterday, played him a video showing him saying, look, if we vote to leave the EU, we will leave the single market, because having to stop free movement means we have to leave the single market. So we've had that debate. Let's not look back. Let's look forward now. My view is, let's make sure that our Prime Minister has a strong mandate, because she's going to have to negotiate with 27 other countries to get us a good deal. We want a deal that works for the EU and works for the United Kingdom. I don't think this is a deal where, they win, we lose, we win, they lose. I think the right thing to do is to give her a mandate to deliver a good Brexit for the United Kingdom.
You've had your say, Nadine. Thank you very much.
May I say
Dominic's not yet to answer the question about democracy, because that's the fundamental question here, isn't it? Are we truly represented in our democracy, or is the people really getting a voice? Your view, Dominic.
What are we afraid of with democracy? What's wrong with it? Why are we afraid of reforming the House of Lords and putting in elected people who can be voted in and voted out? We missed a great opportunity with Labour and then with the coalition to reform these things. We should have a House of Lords. We're the only country in the world that doesn't have, only democracy in the world, that doesn't have an elected house, elected second house. Talking about Sweden, I went to Sweden on holiday a couple of years ago, and the other thing I would reform about our House of Lords is the way it looks. sitting opposite each other and shouting at each other is not conducive to decision making. We're the only country, I think Canada and Australia copied us on that, but we're the only country that do that. Sweden, they sit like Scotland, they sit in a semicircle. And the other thing that I found, not only do they have 50% women, which would be a fantastic target to go for, but also, interestingly, in Sweden, they don't sit in party groups, they sit geographically. So we would have, say, Cornish MPs over there and Scottish MPs over there, because the idea is the Cornish Liberal Democrat possibly has more in common with a Cornish Conservative than a Cornish Conservative has with a Yorkshire Conservative. I thought that was a really fascinating idea. We have to reform our parliament. It's falling apart physically. They're going to have to not knock it down, but refurbish it. What a great opportunity to have moved our parliament to somewhere like the NEC in the middle of England, make MPs get out of London, have a nice semicircle, I mean, obviously here it's not a good example because Nadine would be sitting next to other Conservatives, but make them sit in, if Nadine won, sorry. Make you sit with people you live nearby. And the speaker, the question at the beginning, you're right, but also you're wrong. We argue up here, but we don't hate each other. And I think nearly a year after Joe Cox was killed, we need to remember that we are better off together. Our democracy is not perfect, but it hasn't fallen apart quite yet. And although we argue quite a lot, I don't think Theresa May actually likes Jeremy Corbyn personally, but I'm sure they don't really despise each other as much as they're made to look every Wednesday when they're forced to debate with each other. Votes for 16. Just think about that for a second. You're not saying as soon as someone is 16, they have to vote. It's a choice to vote at 16. Currently, 18-year-olds get the vote, but that means if you're 17 now, you're going to be 23 by the time you vote, unless we have another stitch-up election. You're going to be 23. You'll have gone through university. Votes at 16 means 16 to 19-year-olds get to vote, and it's your choice. You don't have to vote, and we would have to improve education in schools. And very interestingly, in the Scottish referendum, more 16 to 18-year-olds voted than 18 to 25-year-olds. If they get into the habit early on, then they are more likely to vote later on. So that's why I'm glad the other parties have joined the Greens, who've been asking for votes for 16 for 20 years.
Simple question for Nadine. Would you favour 16-year-olds getting a vote?
I've actually asked 16-year-olds that question, and they themselves are divided as to whether they should get the vote or not. I'm agnostic in terms of, does it...
Abstaining is still a vote, though, isn't it?
No, not abstaining.
The ones that didn't agree with it wouldn't have to vote, would they?
You're not listening to me.
Oh,
they weren't abstaining. They were divided.
Yes, I know.
As in, half of them said we shouldn't get the vote.
Yeah.
The other half of them said
we should get the vote.
Half
of you said they shouldn't get the vote didn't have to vote if they get the vote, if you follow my logic. But that's another story. So you don't know. You don't know.
I just think, look, it's open to debate, but 16-year-olds themselves aren't sure whether they should have the vote. They are divided themselves.
They're reflective. They're reflective and thinking about it. That's a good thing. Say again, sorry? In class, definitely. Got a question up here. We've only got 10 minutes or so left.
May I
I promise you, Tom, you're going to start the next answer off. And I'd like to get just a couple of questions in if we can. We have a lady here wearing a grey top. There we are. That's the one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could you tell us who you are and where you're from?
I'm Jill Wilson, and I live just outside Stratford. My question is to do with education funding again, so you may want to pass over me straight away. I don't know.
Get it out. Let's see.
Okay, I'm actually here this evening to decide who I'm going to vote for, because after 40 years of voting Tory, I'm sorry to say I can no longer.
Because of education? Because of that issue?
For a whole host of reasons, but the thing that really bugs me this time around is that we're told that Warwickshire, which has always been in the lowest quartile of funding under the previous formulae, is still at the bottom. We're actually losing on this basis. Okay, and Nadine is saying that it may actually improve once the consultation's gone back to the government. But my question is, when the government is asked about funding, they always respond by saying, we are putting more money into schools now than we ever have before. So how can it possibly be that a school that was in the bottom, schools in an area in the bottom quartile of funding has actually gone down after this new reevaluation. So I just don't believe what's being said. What bothers, it's a question for Nadine really, why is it that can be the response, that we're putting more money in, when in fact that can't be the case? And I think that actually the Conservatives are taking their voters for mugs. I just find I cannot believe what's being said any longer.
Very, very brief response.
That particular question was fact-checked tonight on the Radio 4. We are putting more money than ever before, but we're also having to educate more children as well.
10% more children in schools. 10% more children.
But I was just giving you the answer to it. That's all I wanted to do. Well, I have the disadvantage of not having a manifesto in front of me because our manifesto has not been published as yet.
Will it be costed? Will it be costed? Well,
let's wait and see the manifesto.
Okay.
Coming out very shortly.
Got a chap here who's got a question to ask. Name and rank, please.
Bruce, my name is Bruce Horton. I live in Welford.
Hi, Bruce.
Was our MP right to vote against protecting the residents' rights of the 5,000 EU nationals that were lawfully resident here on the 23rd of June?
I'll let Jeff answer that question first. Get your microphone.
No, he was absolutely wrong, and I think it was disgraceful that he voted against it. And this is actually a fundamental issue for me. I wrote to the Stratford Herald, to a bit more publicity for the Herald, back in March, arguing that we have a duty, all of us, we're all European Union citizens still in this country, to offer friendship and to offer continuing rights to our European Union citizens who have acquired their rights to live and work here under a treaty which we are bound by. And they have been put in an awful position of uncertainty by the negotiating position that our Prime Minister has adopted. There should have been an immediate and unilateral decision to recognise the acquired rights of all of our European Union citizens in this country.
Very briefly.
It's and I can assure you it is the absolute red line for Labour in the negotiations. It's our first point. We will go straight out and we will say that, and we expect, I'm sure, that the EU will reciprocate, and I believe that we will, and this would put us in a much better environment, a positive environment, to pursue those negotiations. So I think it's absolutely essential.
So here's I think we're going to hear from Nadine because it's specifically about Nadine. I'm just going to squeeze one more question in after that.
Our interest is to protect EU citizens living in the United Kingdom as well as British citizens living in Europe. When Theresa May became Prime Minister, we took legal advice, and the legal advice said that we can do that very quickly, and she wanted to do it immediately through an exchange of letters with the EU 27 to protect the rights of EU citizens living in the UK as well as British people living in Europe. The EU 27 said, no, we're not doing that. And I think it's important that we protect the rights of both British citizens as well as European citizens in the UK. Only after Article 50.
Excuse me. Can we hear this? This is interesting.
That's not true. That is not true.
Okay. Quick answer, and then we move on.
Well, let it finish.
Can I ask you, Doctor? It's Dr. Pertigella, isn't it? Just out of interest, are you an NHS doctor or an academic doctor? Okay, just it interests me.
Can I just say, just on that point, they would only reciprocate after the triggering of Article 50. That is that is the point. They did not want to take it off the table before we trigger Article 50.
Okay. Okay. Very quickly. Very quickly.
The Prime Minister has made it clear that it's her priority to protect EU citizens living in the UK as well as British citizens living in Europe. It is an absolute priority.
Unilaterally, if it's a priority, just say that they have their rights.
Because we want to protect. We want to protect both. Nobody's making any negotiation. Both sides want to take it off the table. They didn't want to do it before triggering Article 50, which is why they refused to do it when Theresa May became Prime Minister. They wanted her to actually trigger Article 50 before they sit down and negotiate. That's the only difference.
I'm going to ask you. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going to ask you to make up your minds on what you've heard. Rather than say a right or wrong. Tom's been really anxious to say something, so we'll go to Tom. Then we have a question from a young person.
In regards to the lady at the back there who spoke about democracy and what do we mean by democracy, and the lady to my right, who I believe is talking about the small print, so important. I have an idea which, again, is a big idea, but that's what I'm here for, and I'm very grateful to voice my ideas.
Could you make it really quickly?
I will do, if you give me 3 or 4 minutes, as you did with all the others.
I'm giving you a minute.
All right, give me a minute, but you gave all the others a lot longer.
Yeah, I know.
What I want to say is, there is one institution that we never think of devolving, and that is the monarchy. Because Her Majesty, well, let me say this.
Hands in the air. Do we let Tom go on at this stage, please?
I think as...
No, okay, thanks, Tom.
Well, why can't I speak on?
Tom, I'm sorry.
Please.
We haven't got much time
No,
left.
that's your idea, Mr. Chairman.
It is, I know, I'm wicked.
Look, I'm here to voice an opinion. I have 1 minute left. Can I not continue?
No, Tom, please. We've got a question here from a young lady. We've got a question here from you.
I'm not finished substantiating what I want to say.
I understand, Tom.
It's not right that you should close me down when you think the monarchy is above address in what I want to think about it. Can I just finish one more?
Did you not just finish it then?
Well, no, because you're not giving me a minute to.
Let's not have a debate about what a minute is. Can we just have the next question, please? Tom, I'm sorry. No, Tom. Tom, please forgive me. No, I've listened to the mood of the room, Tom. Right,
go to university.
Can you start again, please? And can you tell us who you are?
I'm Anisha. I go to Stratford Girls Grammar. In a year's time, I plan to go to university. However, the £40,000 debt that I'll be left with is slightly off-putting, especially if I want to go to university of my choice in London. What would you plan to do about the higher education crisis that Britain is currently experiencing, and aim towards a Conservative Party? Do you believe that wealth should limit education?
So I'm going to start that with. I'm going to come back. Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to the bit about the Conservative Party to Nadine, but I'm going to start with Liz as the party that helped tuition fees over the line. Where are you standing now? I have 4 children. I'm sorry. Where are you standing now on tuition fees and the costs of an 18-year-old looking forward when she's 22, 23, with £40,000-50,000 in debt?
Okay, fundamentally, it shouldn't be a block in terms of income to go to university. And the Liberal Democrats have always believed in free education. Now, the issue is that both Labour and the Conservatives were opposed to lowering and scrapping tuition fees last time. We were in a coalition government and it wasn't feasible to come up with a proposal to scrap them. How can you scrap?
Let her finish.
How can you scrap tuition fees if you're minority? Yes, and I believe. I personally didn't.
We've heard you. Let Liz finish.
I'm a student. I have the same debt because I'm at university currently. So I'm not exactly.
How do you get over the fact that
the point is that we have to fund higher education somehow. And in the manifesto today, one of the big things that I want to get across, because I'm a student myself, and I'm a student from a disadvantaged background myself, and one of the bigger barriers than tuition fees, which you have a loan for and you don't pay until you are earning, the bigger barrier is maintenance grants and maintenance fees. It's a disgrace that students get less than people on benefits when they are studying for important careers such as doctors and teachers. We need to be able to fund the cost of the most disadvantaged students going to university and being able to live. We would reintroduce maintenance grants for the poorest students and also scrap the scandal whereby the Conservatives have now taken away the link to earnings and to inflation, so that now, whereas you did start to pay them back once you were earning over £21,000, the link to inflation has now been scrapped. So as the years go on, in real terms, that will be less and less income before you are starting to pay the tuition fees back. There are some people...
It's exactly the opposite of what actually the plan is, isn't it?
No, there are some people, I just want to say this, because there are some people who, for them, tuition fees was the big red line and they will never ever touch the Liberal Democrats again. Well, I just want to say to you, that's fine, but we won't have a world-class university sector if we are dragged out of the single market. And to me, Brexit now has completely changed the game, and I think it's worth looking at all the policies of all the parties again and looking realistically, because every one of the main parties has completely U-turned and reneged on child benefits, on tuition fees.
Okay, thanks very much. So listen, thanks. Effectively summing that up, the tuition fees was the lesser of the two evils, and that there is, going forward, a plan to cover maintenance grants. What's Labour's costed proposal about tuition fees?
Labour's costed proposal is that not only will we reintroduce the maintenance grant, but also we will abolish university tuition fees, because the reason for that...
for the richest students as well.
The reason for that is because we are in a situation where the trebling of tuition fees has fundamentally failed us. As you rightly said, the average debt for young people leaving university is £44,000. And when you bear in mind the housing situation, the housing crisis, the cost of a home, to carry on that sort of debt, it denies you the kind of opportunity that previous generations have had. And it's because previous generations have had that opportunity that we owe a debt to the young people now who want to aspire to go into university, that they should not be left with that kind of debt hanging around their neck. And that is costed out of the taxation increase that I referred to on those earning £80,000 a year and those earning also over £120,000 a year. It will be a cost that society has to meet, just as it used to meet when we had a system before without university tuition fees. But we have to target the maintenance grants on those who are most in need. And we have to ensure that universities are properly funded, because if you elect me, I will make sure that there is no way that universities lose out as a result of this. And I have to declare an interest as I am a university professor. So from my point of view, in one level, it's a bit concerning, but on another level, I'm satisfied that we've identified the resources that are needed. And we have to do this because this system has failed us, system has failed young people and put them in a situation of debt that they should never, that should never have happened before. How do you mean you can't scrap them? Sorry.
Next year there won't be fees.
I mean, when
this
they went
year there
up,
are.
when they went up,
Difficult one, that isn't it?
Yeah, it is a difficult one. It's a situation you inherit. Yeah.
You've had your say and you've had yours. Nadeem, and we're going to go right along the table, including to Tom, who's still cross with me.
We would have to work a way of implementing it to be as fairly as possible.
So, party of making individuals pay rather than the country pay as a society. Where are you going to be on tuition fees? Deeply unpopular with everybody, parents, students.
I was listening. I was listening to Alan Johnson 2 days ago on Radio 4. He was the minister who introduced tuition fees to Charles Clarke, who was the Secretary of State, and Alan was the charmer, and Charles Clarke was the bad guy to get the thing through. And what Alan said is that the reason the Lib Dems had to go along with the coalition is because it's unaffordable not to have tuition if you really want to invest and make our universities continue to be world class and world beaters, second probably only to the universities in the United States of America. As far as the young lady who asked the question, if you get that degree, your earning capacity is hundreds of thousands better than if you don't get the degree. If you don't, hear me out for a second. If you earn 21,000, you begin to pay back. If you never earn more than 26,000, then after 30 years, the debt is scratched. 50% of those debts are actually never paid back.
Did you pay tuition fees?
No, not in my time. There was no tuition fees. But nevertheless, if you look at what's happening with education, you have to invest. Look, the SNP in Scotland are in trouble because they have not been investing in education at the moment. And you will see on June the 8th or the morning of June the 9th that they will have to go back at some point and govern Scotland properly rather than just talk about separatism. But education is incredibly important to invest in. The investment that's going in now because of the policy means more children from deprived backgrounds where families have never been to university now go to university. I think that's a good thing, and it's good to continue to invest in universities.
Okay. Dominic, we're moving straight along the line.
Jandy first, because she's been waiting.
Yeah.
Yes, fine. Jandy,
well, I've got several things to say. One is that nurses in my day had accommodation provided for 3 years, and it was one way of leaving home and becoming a nurse. And you got paid. My first paid check was £9 for a month. And common sense has gone out of the window. Academics aren't usually very hot on common sense. And the other thing is, if you're very clever, you can go abroad and do it free, you know. You can go get tuition in Amsterdam in English while we're in the EU.
Okay,
so
Dominic,
you need to think a bit. Use your heads a bit. Wake up! Wake up!
Dominic?
Really quickly, I think we've just seen why Nadeem voted for a rise in tuition fees in the last government. We don't have to have tuition fees. It should be a right to go to university. This might sound strange for someone who works in a grammar school, but too many people are going to university.
Yes, absolutely.
We need more people not going to university and doing other kinds of apprenticeships and jobs.
Okay.
But it should be all right to go to university. And you tax people on their income so they pay it back later on. And just on that word tax, if you want to be really green, stop thinking of it as tax. Think of it as membership fees, and then you're happier paying them. I'm happy paying my taxes on my huge teaching salary.
Okay.
Can I just say very quickly, as an advert, tell your friends and your children you can do an apprenticeship degree. I did that job as the advisor to Cameron. We're investing about £3 billion a year in apprenticeships. You can do an apprenticeship degree, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Okay. Final word, and excuse me. Final words to go to Tom because he's still cross, and I don't want him to be cross.
Thank you, Will. I'll try and bring in that subject.
It's about tuition fees.
Right. Yes. Tuition fees is connected, I believe, with when we reach pensionable age in this thinking. Okay, let's kick off with no tuition fees. Get everybody on a level playing field. When we reach a different strata in society, professor, doctor, whatever it is, after our education, why not form a structure of payment in some kind of pension which repays not only ourselves, but the institutions which badly need greater support, such as the NHS. That is one idea proposed. And in an indirect way, I think the devolvement of the House of Lords becomes an institution which advises ahead of legislation, rather than scrutinising legislation. There's a lot of time wasting. The front benchers can do that. But the House of Lords can be devolved into an institution where all the great minds of state and those people that have been appointed through the royal prerogative to be sirs and madams and this, that and the other, which I believe in the honour system, which is great, they can form the new House of Lords as an institution which gets advanced ideas ahead of legislation. That way it guides the direction of travel in which Parliament can go. It assists Parliament rather than restricting Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your patience, Tom. It's very kind of you to have been so tolerant with me. A quick thanks again to the Herald for organising this. Ladies and gentlemen, I have done some small service in my time as a very, very minor plankton-sized public servant. When I did so, it struck me that the hardest job in the world is to be a public servant. To be one and to put yourself in the firing line like the chaps and chapasses have here tonight, I think is admirable. To be somebody here tonight is to contribute to democracy. I think you all make me feel extremely honoured to be here. I want to thank you, the Herald, and the fantastic team that have been organising the audio visuals here tonight at the Herald House. Thank you very much indeed.